My father still won't speak to me. It's been 2 years since that night I used his name, his health, his possible death, as an excuse to cheat on the only man who ever truly loved me. Dad's a veteran, served 2 tours in Afghanistan, raised me to value honor above everything, and I threw it all away for one night with my married boss in a motel room that smelled like cigarettes and regret. I'm Beth, 30 years old now, working at a gas station in Tulsa because I can't get a decent job anywhere in my hometown of Stillwater. Not after what I did. Not after the whole town found out. Small cities in Oklahoma never forget. And my name is branded with the worst kind of shame. The gas station is one of those 24-hour places off Interstate 44, where truckers stop for coffee and exhausted families pause on road trips. I work the night shift, 11 to 7, because that's when I'm least likely to run into anyone from my old life. Still, sometimes a familiar face appears under the fluorescent lights, and I watch recognition dawn in their eyes before they decide whether to acknowledge me or pretend we've never met. Most pretend. Last week, Mrs. Henderson came in around 3 a.m. She used to teach Sunday school at our church, always saved me a chocolate donut after service. She saw me behind the counter in my polyester uniform, name tag crooked, and her whole face just crumbled. She left without buying anything, and I heard her crying in her car before she drove away. That's what I've become, someone who makes Sunday school teachers weep. But let me tell you the whole story, because maybe if I tell it enough times, I'll finally understand why I destroyed everything good in my life for something that meant less than nothing. I met Nolan when I was 24. He'd just graduated from Oklahoma State with an engineering degree and got hired at the manufacturing plant where I worked in accounts receivable. He was different from the guys I'd dated before. Steady, kind, the type who'd help old ladies with their groceries without thinking twice about it. Our first date was mini golf and ice cream. He let me win, though he claimed later he didn't. By our 6th month together, he was having dinner with my parents every Sunday. By year 2, my dad was teaching him to fish at Lake McMurtry, telling him all his war stories, treating him like the son he never had. "That boy's going to be your husband," Mom would say, watching them work on Dad's truck together. "Mark my words." She was right. We all knew it. Nolan fit into our family like he'd always been there. He'd bring my mom flowers every time he visited, helped Dad with projects around the house, remembered every birthday and anniversary. My parents loved him almost as much as I did. I still have the recipe box he made me for our 3rd anniversary. Hand-carved oak with my initials burned into the lid. He'd spent months on it in secret, collecting recipes from my mom and grandmother, writing each one out in his careful engineer's handwriting. "For all the memories we'll cook together," the card said. It sits empty now in my apartment, too painful to fill, too precious to throw away. The thing about Nolan was he noticed everything. Not in a creepy way, but in a way that made you feel seen. He knew I liked my coffee with 2 sugars and just a splash of cream. He'd record my favorite shows if I was working late. He'd buy the expensive shampoo I loved but would never splurge on myself, leaving it in the shower without saying a word. "You spoil me," I'd tell him. "You deserve to be spoiled," he'd reply, kissing my forehead. He really believed I did. 4 years in, we were living together in a nice apartment on the north side of town. Not fancy, but clean and comfortable. Nolan had been promoted twice, was making good money. We had plans, a house by year 5, wedding by 6, kids after that. Everything mapped out like one of his engineering blueprints. Then March 2020 hit, and the world went crazy. The plant shut down for 2 months. Nolan worked from home, which meant he was always there, always present, always asking if I needed anything, wanting to watch another movie, suggesting we try a new recipe. The man who'd given me space to breathe for 4 years was suddenly there every second of every day. "We should be grateful," he'd say, pulling me close on the couch. "We're healthy, we have jobs, we have each other." I'd smile and agree, but inside I was climbing the walls. I needed air, space, something different from our suddenly tiny apartment and his constant suffocating presence. It wasn't that Nolan did anything wrong. He'd make breakfast every morning, leaving mine warm in the oven if I slept in. He'd take breaks from his computer to dance with me in the kitchen to whatever was playing on the radio. He'd set up elaborate movie nights with popcorn and candy like we were at a theater. He was trying so hard to make lockdown bearable, and his effort made me feel like an ungrateful monster for wanting to scream. "You okay?" he'd ask when he caught me staring out the window. "Just cabin fever," I'd say, forcing a smile. "Want to go for a walk? We could drive out to the lake, stay in the car? Maybe later." But later never came, and the walls kept closing in. That's when Vince started texting. Vince was my manager at work. 35, married with a 3-year-old daughter, the kind of guy who wore too much cologne and always found reasons to touch your shoulder during conversations. Before lockdown, I'd kept him at arm's length. Professional, proper. But with Nolan always there, always so grateful and present and suffocating, Vince's texts felt like windows opening in a stuffy room. "Missing our coffee talks," he'd write. "Just coffee?" I'd respond, knowing I was playing with fire. "Maybe something stronger when this is all over." I should have stopped it there. Should have shown Nolan the texts, laughed about my creepy boss, reinforced the boundaries of our relationship. Instead, I hid my phone when it buzzed, smiled at private jokes Nolan couldn't share, felt a thrill I hadn't experienced in years. By May, restrictions were lifting. Nolan was back at the plant, I was back in the office 3 days a week, and Vince was suggesting we get that drink. "My wife's taking Emma to her mom's next weekend," he said, cornering me by the copy machine. "We could finally have that talk." "What talk?" I asked, playing dumb. "About us. About this energy between us." "There is no us." "I have a boyfriend." "And I have a wife. Doesn't mean we can't explore what this is." He moved closer, his hand brushing mine as he reached for paper that didn't need reaching for. I could smell his cologne. Too much, always too much, mixing with the sharp scent of toner. "I see how you look at me," he continued, voice low. "How you laugh at my jokes in meetings. How you stay late when you know I'm working." "I stay late to finish my reports," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. "Sure you do." He smiled, and I hated how my pulse quickened. "Think about it, Beth. One drink. What could it hurt?" "Everything," I thought. But I didn't say it. Instead, I took my copies and fled to my desk, where I stared at my computer screen and saw nothing but my own reflection. A woman I didn't recognize anymore. The smart thing would have been to report him to HR. The right thing would have been to tell Nolan. Instead, I let Vince's words echo in my head all week, imagining what exploring might mean. Then came the camping trip. Our friends Randy and Denise had been planning it for months. Memorial Day weekend at Keystone State Park, 4 days of hiking and campfires and pretending the world hadn't gone insane. Nolan was so excited. He'd bought a new tent, researched trails, packed enough supplies for an army. "This is exactly what we need," he said Thursday night, organizing our gear. Fresh air, time with friends, no screens, just us and nature. My phone buzzed. Vince. "Wife's taking Emma to her mom's after all." "I'm free this weekend. That drink we talked about?" I stared at the text, heart pounding. This weekend. The same weekend I'd be trapped in a tent with Nolan and our perfectly happy couple friends, playing the role of the devoted girlfriend while something inside me screamed for escape. "You okay, babe?" Nolan asked, noticing my expression. "Yeah, just... Dad texted, he's not feeling great. The lie came so easily it scared me." "Should we cancel?" "If Dan's sick." No. "He says it's just a cold. Probably nothing." But the seed was planted. Over the next 2 days, I watered it carefully. Mentioned Dad's cold getting worse. Checked my phone with worried expressions. Set the stage for what I was about to do. Saturday afternoon, we were at the campsite. Randy and Nolan setting up tents, Denise and I preparing dinner. The sun was setting over the lake, everything perfect and peaceful and absolutely suffocating. I watched Nolan work, his t-shirt damp with sweat, laughing at something Randy said. He caught me looking and winked, that same wink he'd given me across a crowded bar 6 years ago. I should have felt lucky, loved, secure. Instead, I felt trapped. "Earth to Beth," Denise said, nudging me. "You okay?" "You've been quiet all day." "Just thinking about work stuff," I lied. "Girl, we're camping. Work doesn't exist out here." She handed me a beer, clinked hers against mine. "To forgetting our troubles." If only she knew. My phone rang. I'd changed Vince's contact name to Mom earlier that day, right before we'd lost service. Now, at the one spot in the campground with reception, the call I'd been expecting came through. "Hello?" "Mom?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My heart pounded so hard I was sure they could see it through my shirt. "What?" "Oh my God, is he okay?" I listened to Vince breathe on the other end, playing my part. "COVID?" "But how?" "Yes, of course, I'll come right away." I hung up, hands shaking with adrenaline and guilt. "What's wrong?" Nolan was at my side immediately. "It's Dad. Mom says he tested positive and he's really sick, having trouble breathing." "She's scared, Nolan. I have to go." The concern on his face almost broke me. "Of course. Let's pack up. We'll leave right now." "No," I said too quickly. "I mean, you should stay." "Enjoy the weekend. I'll be with my parents, exposed to the virus. No point both of us risking it." "Beth, I'm not letting you go alone." "Please." I grabbed his hands, looked into those trusting brown eyes. "Mom's already freaking out. If you get sick too, just stay. I'll call you as soon as I know anything." I watched him struggle with the decision. Nolan, who'd held my hair when I had food poisoning, who'd driven through an ice storm to pick me up from a girls' night gone wrong, who'd never let me face anything alone. Using his protective nature against him felt like twisting a knife. "I don't like this," he said finally. "Your dad, he's like my dad too. I should be there." "He'd want you safe," I said, hating myself more with each word. "You know how he is." "Military tough. He'd be pissed if we both got sick." That landed. Dad would be practical about quarantine, about unnecessary risks. Nolan nodded slowly, pulled me into a hug that smelled like campfire and home, and everything I was about to betray. "Call me the second you get there," he whispered. "I love you." "I love you too." Randy and Denise backed me up, said they'd take care of Nolan, make sure he didn't spend the weekend worrying. The way they rallied around us, so concerned for my sick father, made me hate myself. But not enough to stop. I called a cab from the camp office, claimed I was too upset to drive, hugged Nolan goodbye, promised to be careful, said I loved him. All lies, except maybe the last one. I did love him in my way, just not enough to keep from destroying him. Vince picked me up at the gas station where the cab dropped me. He'd gotten a room at the Fairfield Inn off Highway 51, classy. We barely made it through the door before his hands were all over me. "I've wanted this for so long," he breathed against my neck. I wanted to feel the same. Wanted the passion and excitement I'd built up in my mind. Instead, I felt cheap, dirty, like I was watching myself from outside my body. This man smelled wrong, touched me wrong, wasn't Nolan, but I'd come too far to stop. Afterwards, lying in the too-soft bed while Vince showered, I checked my phone. 17 texts from Nolan. "How's your dad? Made it there safe? I love you." Each one a knife between my ribs. I texted back lies. Dad was stable. Mom was grateful I was there. I'd call in the morning. "Round two?" Vince asked, coming out of the bathroom. "I should go." "It's not even midnight." "Stay." So I stayed. Let him order champagne from room service like we were celebrating something instead of committing mutual destruction. Pretended to laugh at his stories about his wife, his daughter, the life he was risking for what amounted to nothing. "Kristen thinks I'm at a work conference," he said, pouring another glass. "Booked the room under the company card." "Brilliant," I muttered, thinking of Nolan alone in a tent, probably unable to sleep from worry. "You know what I love about you?" Vince moved closer, his hand on my thigh. "You get it. You understand that marriage doesn't have to mean the end of excitement." "Is that what this is?" Excitement? Destruction, I thought. Betrayal, the worst mistake of my life. But I smiled and drank the champagne that tasted like regret and let him kiss me again, because I'd already crossed the line. What did it matter how far past it I went? I finally called a cab at 2 a.m. Vince was snoring, one arm flung over the space I'd occupied. I looked at him in the harsh bathroom light and felt nothing but disgust. This soft-bodied, selfish man who'd seemed so exciting in text messages was just another cheater, and I'd become one too. The apartment was dark when I got home. I showered until the water ran cold, trying to wash off the smell of Vince's cologne, the feeling of wrong hands on my skin. Crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling, planning my lies for the morning. But morning came too soon, and with it, the end of everything. I woke to Nolan's side of the bed empty. Checked my phone, 10:17 a.m. He should have been at the campsite, enjoying Sunday morning coffee with Randy and Denise. Instead, I heard voices from the living room. Familiar voices. My parents. I threw on clothes, mind racing. Maybe Nolan had called them, worried about Dad. Maybe I could still salvage this. The three of them were sitting at our kitchen table. Dad, in his usual flannel shirt, very much not dying of COVID. Mom clutching a coffee mug like a weapon. And Nolan, beautiful, trusting Nolan, looking at me like I'd shot him. "Hi, honey," Dad said, his voice deadly calm. "Heard I was sick." The room spun. I grabbed the doorframe for support. "I can explain—" "Can you?" Nolan asked. "Because your parents are pretty confused about why you told me your dad was dying when he was actually at home watching the game." There was a misunderstanding." "Show me your phone," Nolan said quietly. "What?" "Your mom called you yesterday. Should be in your recent calls. Show me." My phone felt like a bomb in my pocket. Vince's number was saved as Mom. The texts from last night would destroy any lie I could craft. "That's private." "Private." Nolan laughed, but it was hollow. "Right." "Bethany Marie," my father said, using my full name for the first time in years. "Tell the truth." Now. The Marine Corps command voice, the one that brooked no argument, no excuses, no lies. I was with someone else. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Mom started crying. Dad's face turned red, then purple. But Nolan just nodded, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. "I knew something was off," he said quietly. "The way you were so insistent I stay at the campsite. The way you called the cab instead of letting me drive you. I almost followed you, you know. But I trusted you." The past tense of that word, trusted, hit harder than any scream would have. "Who?" Dad demanded. "Does it matter?" "Who?" "My boss, Vince." "The married one?" Mom gasped. "With the little girl?" I nodded, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "How long?" Nolan asked. "It was just last night." "How long?" I understood what he was really asking. How long had I been lying, sneaking, betraying him, even if the physical part had just happened? "A couple months, just texts, until yesterday." "While we were stuck in that apartment together," he said slowly, working it out. "While I was trying to make things easier for you, you were—" He couldn't finish, didn't need to. Dad stood so fast his chair tipped over. For a moment I thought he might hit something. Someone, maybe me. Instead he walked to Nolan, put a hand on his shoulder. "Pack her things? I'll help." "Dad, don't." He turned to me, and the disappointment in his eyes was worse than any anger. You used me. Used my health, my possible death, to cheat on the best man you'll ever find. That's not the daughter I raised." "It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" Dad's voice was dangerously quiet. "Explain to me how using your mother and me as an alibi for adultery is anything other than what it looks like." I had no answer. There was no answer. They packed my things in silence while I sat on the couch, sobbing and begging. Mom wouldn't look at me. Dad worked with military efficiency. Nolan just looked broken, folding my clothes with the same care he'd always shown. "Wait," I said, panic rising as reality hit. "Please, can we talk about this?" "Nolan, please. We've been together 6 years. Doesn't that mean anything?" He paused, holding the sweater he'd bought me last Christmas. Soft cashmere in the exact shade of blue he said matched my eyes. "It meant everything," he said quietly. "That's why this hurts so much. I'll do anything. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want." "Stop." Dad's voice cut through my desperation. "You had 6 years to appreciate what you had. 6 years of that man's devotion. And you threw it away for what? A few hours in a cheap motel?" "Dan," Mom said softly, but he shook his head. "No, Linda. She needs to hear this." He turned back to me and I saw tears in his eyes, something I'd only seen twice before, at his father's funeral and when his best friend died in Afghanistan. "Do you know what he asked me last month?" "Asked for my blessing to marry you. Had already bought the ring. Was planning to propose on your camping trip." The floor dropped out from under me. In the corner of my vision, I saw Nolan close his eyes, jaw clenched. "That's right," Dad continued. "While you were texting another man, he was planning your future. While you were lying about where you were going, he was showing me the house he wanted to buy you. You didn't just betray him, Bethany, you betrayed all of us." When Vince's wife called 2 weeks later, screaming about homewreckers and threatening lawsuits, I wasn't surprised. When HR called me in and fired me for inappropriate conduct with a supervisor, I saw it coming. When the whole town found out, Vince's wife made sure of that, I knew I deserved every whispered comment, every dirty look, every friend who suddenly stopped returning my calls. Dad didn't speak to me for 6 months. When he finally did, it was to say he'd never forgive me for using his honor as a shield for my dishonor. Mom tries to bridge the gap, invites me to holiday dinners where Dad leaves the room when I enter. The strong, larger-than-life man who'd raised me can't stand to be in the same space as his only daughter. But the worst part? Nolan thrived without me. He started dating a teacher named Carol 8 months after I'd destroyed us. She's everything I pretended to be, genuine, kind, devoted. They bought a house last year, the one Nolan and I had looked at online. Posted pictures of their engagement party last month. Randy and Denise were there, smiling in photos I'll never be part of. My dad was there too, in the background of one photo, laughing at something Nolan said. They still go fishing apparently, still work on trucks together. Nolan got the family I threw away along with everything else. Vince? His wife divorced him, took the kid, moved to Texas. He lasted another month at work before quitting. Heard he's selling insurance in Oklahoma City now, probably telling some other woman she's special, that there's energy between them. Me? I work nights at the gas station, live in a studio apartment above a Korean restaurant, spend my days wondering how I became this person. The girl who had everything, loving parents, a devoted boyfriend, a future mapped out in happiness, and burned it all down for a night in a cheap motel with a man who forgot my name the moment consequences showed up. Sometimes I drive past the house Nolan bought with Carol. There's a garden now, something we'd talked about planting together. His truck in the driveway has a car seat in the back. They had a baby last spring. A little boy, my mom says, looks just like him. I want to hate Carol for living my life. Want to rage at Nolan for moving on so easily. Want to blame Vince for pursuing me, my parents for casting me out, the pandemic for trapping me, anything and anyone to make it not my fault, But I can't, because every lie I told, every choice I made, every step toward that motel room was mine. I wasn't trapped or tricked or forced. I was bored, selfish, and willing to detonate my entire life for the thrill of something different. The camping trip was supposed to be a celebration of normalcy returning. Instead, it became the backdrop for the worst decision of my life. I traded a man who loved me for one who didn't even like me, exchanged a family who embraced me for parents who can barely look at me, gave up a future of happiness for nights alone above a restaurant, wondering how I became the villain in my own story. My father taught me about honor, about loyalty, about doing the right thing even when it's hard. And I used his lessons as weapons, twisted his potential death into an alibi for betrayal. That's the part that haunts me most. Not just that I cheated, but how I did it, how I made my own father an accomplice to my destruction. There's no redemption here. No happy ending where everyone forgives and forgets. Just me, 30 years old, working for minimum wage and watching the life I threw away bloom in someone else's hands. They say you don't know what you have until it's gone. But I knew exactly what I had. I just thought I deserved more. Turns out I deserved exactly what I got.